So hello, YouTube. This is the Swift Boys. I don't think the audio portion will get this, so this is your special bonus couple minutes.
Yeah, welcome YouTube to the Swift Boys. We're a podcast that we just talk about Taylor Swift. We've been doing this for about a year and a half now, and we're finally branching out to YouTube. This is such a surprise that we're on YouTube and that we're doing this episode right now. Like, I woke up this morning, I thought it was going to be a normal day, and then I turn over and look at my phone and I see a text from Scott saying, new album tonight. That was how I heard the news that Taylor is going to release Folklore today. She just released it. We are recording this less than 2 hours after Folklore was released. We've each listened to the album once through, and we're here to give our initial impressions of Folklore, what we think, our reaction, just start dissecting the album and give you guys our opinions on it.
All right, now let me say hello to the listening Swifties. Hello and welcome to the Swift Boys podcast. This is season 3, episode 2. We thought that season 3 was going to be about 1989, but we were wrong. Taylor Swift has dropped a surprise album on us with less than 24 hours notice. Folklore is out now. We have listened to it, and we have some hot takes, Swifties. So, Captain Natty, why don't you give me your hot takes and tell me what stood out to you in this album on your first listen?
So, Folklore it had the vibe, like the sound that I was expecting. Like, you know, waking up this morning, seeing, it's going to be called Folklore, seeing all the like photos and artwork that Taylor released, definitely gave off this more like calm, relaxed vibe. You know, coming off of Lover, which was literally released less than a year ago, 11 months. We've only had Lover for 11 months, and here she is, so out of character, just dropping a new album on us. She's never done anything like this before. And so what we were able to see of the album, you know, usually we have a lot more hints, but we literally had like 12 hours to like decide, all right, what do we think this album is going to be like before we're actually hearing it. And it made me think going in that it was going to sound a lot more like It's Nice to Have a Friend or The Archer, like those kind of songs off Lover, and it really was that. I would say that almost all the songs on the album kind of sounded the same. That sounds kind of like a gripe, and it sort of is, but I really like the sound of the album. It's not to say I didn't like the sound. Like, I really did like the sound. I liked the mood. I liked, you know, everything was a lot more relaxed. It wasn't as poppy. It was more just like calm, a little bit like kind of like, you know, it's called Folklore. It's not quite folk music, but it was kind of like modern folk. Like, it was a lot more like, you know, electronic, but still like that, like folk, like more instrumental vibe, if that makes sense. But that was just like the theme of the whole album. Like, basically every album had the same sort of structure, or basically every song on the album had the same sort of structure. And I really enjoyed listening to all of the songs, but like thinking back, you know, to be fair, we've only listened to the album once, but like, it's hard to like think like, you know, it's hard to separate the songs in my mind because they all sounded very similar.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. This album did not really focus on the sounds much. It was more on the lyrics. And because of that, it's going to take several listens to really dive into it because there's just so much to unpack there. It's hard to even understand what the songs are talking about on the first go through. And fans of the pod will know that I rely heavily on genius.com to get my analyses of these songs. And those pages are simply not populated yet. So it was a bit difficult for me to tell what some of the songs are about. However, one song that stood out to me that did, I think, have a little bit of a different sound was Betty. That song was a bit more poppy, like not pop, but a bit more high energy than some of the mellower songs on the album.
Yeah,
and so that
thought,
stood out as one of my favorites.
Yeah, I thought Betty, like, it almost could have gone on Fearless. Like, I thought it was more of a throwback vibe, like, because it was more instrumental, like true instrumental. Like, I think there was an accordion in there, or like a banjo, or something harmonica. Much more. A harmonica, yeah. So something much more, you know, kind of throwback to her country days. So like, I was listening to it, I'm like, man, this is like her most, like, of her last 4 albums really, like, this was to me the most like country-ish song of the last 4 albums that she's released, like the most kind of throwback song. And it's fun because, I mean, Betty was about like this 17-year-old person, like this high school relationship or conflict or whatever. And, you know, thinking back, oh, Taylor in high school, that was her vibe. Like she was doing country. So it was kind of like a throwback in both ways. That song, it
Right.
wasn't about Taylor Swift. Like as we'll discuss, most of the songs on this album are Taylor writing from someone else's perspective, Betty being one of them. But I think there's still some kind of, you know, correlation there with Taylor thinking back to this person's high school days, and so her own high school days and her style from when she was back in high school.
Yeah, Betty confused me on my first listen. I didn't know quite what was going on there until she had that line where she said something like, "My name's James" or something. So we know that it's from the point of view of a 17-year-old guy named James. But for a while, I was a bit confused about what this song was going to be about. So what did you think of the theory that a lot of these songs were kind of hinting at the idea of a bit of a broken relationship? There were some theories floating around, which I don't think Taylor substantiated, but people were theorizing that this was a bit of a breakup album between her and Joe.
Yeah, so I did not hear those theories before listening to this album, but like listening to the album, I was like, wait, she said this was about other people. So I hope these are the songs that are about other people. Like there are a lot of breakup songs on this album, especially the first like half of the album. It's
Right.
almost all either breakup songs or about like thinking about another relationship or a past relationship, something like that. So it's like, you know, okay, it's a good thing she called it folklore. It's a good thing she said, this is me from the perspective of other people. Otherwise,
I didn't even put that together. I had not thought that folklore implied other people's stories, but that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so it might be helpful to read. She posted, when she dropped the album, she posted this big text.
Oh, I did not read that.
Yeah, and so it mentions kind of how it's about like other stories, and she like she kind of summarizes a few of the songs. She doesn't say which song is going with which, but like as an example of like, this is what this song is about, this is what this song is about. So it might be helpful to read that. And I think without something like this, it'd definitely be easy for people to think, oh, like how did everyone miss this? How did these rumors not get out? Like clearly clearly Taylor must not be in a relationship anymore. But, you know, we don't know what song is about what. Like definitely some of the songs on the album seemed like they could be about her, but then there's some that were clearly not. And then the one that got me the most was Hoax, which is the last song on the album. Like, yeah, that's a breakup song, and it sounds like it could be about their relationship specifically.
Was it the reference to The Color Blue that got you?
Exactly.
Really stood out to me.
Yeah, so she talks about The Color Blue in that song, which if you've listened to Lover, if you've listened to our podcast, you know, like blue was like the #1 image in the Lover album, referencing, of course, her, we assume still current boyfriend, Joe Alwyn. And she brings it up in this song, and so it's like, wait, okay, we're so used to hearing blue in the context of your boyfriend, like, is that who you're talking about, or is this song one of your folklore songs about someone else, like you imagining being someone else and telling their story?
And there are a lot of references to colors in this album, not just blue, but there's gold and I'd have to go through the album again to catch them all, but I noticed as they were coming up, there's lots of colors referenced throughout this album. So a bit of a throwback to Red. Yeah.
I guess thinking back to her previous albums, this is, she hasn't had an album that's been so consistent in its sound in a while. I guess Reputation kind of all had that like more like, you know, nighttime vibe, right? More
grungy.
Electronic. But Lover had a lot of variety. I guess 1989 was all pop too, but like I'm just thinking of like Lover and Red, which were much more variety albums. This is kind of back in the theme of 1989 and Reputation, where there's one theme. 1989 was pop, Reputation was electronic, and then this, I don't know what exactly you'd call it, but it was more that like synth, folk, like calm, chill, more relaxed vibe.
Yeah, I think I would have liked if there were a couple high energy songs punctuating it throughout. As I said, I think this is an album we're going to appreciate more over time. As we get into the lyrics and really understand what she's saying with these songs, because this is a very lyrics focused album for sure.
Yeah. So if you're new to the podcast and you're not aware, so, you know, obviously this is like, holy crap, there's a new album. We're just kind of giving our initial impressions. But normally we'll go through an album song by song and dissect each song line by line, talk about what Taylor's referencing, what she means, you know, the artistry behind the song, the meaning behind all the imagery, etc. And so we'll do that going forward now. We were going to go over 1989, and we already released our first episode literally yesterday on
Yep.
1989. We thought that's what we were doing next, and then Taylor just dropped this on everyone. So now we're pivoting to this new Folklore album, and so we will give like our detailed readings of each song going forward now after this initial impression. And so going back to what we were talking about earlier, I think would be helpful if I read the little like mini essay almost that Taylor posted on social media
Sure.
when she dropped the album. At least if for no one else's sake, then you're safe.
Right. Yeah, I haven't heard this.
So she posted this, like, kind of looks like a letter, like she signed it, as she sometimes does. And this is what it says. It started with imagery, visuals that popped into my mind and piqued my curiosity. Stars drawn around scars, a cardigan that still bears the scent of loss 20 years later. Battleships sinking into the ocean, down, down, down. The tree swing in the woods of my childhood, hushed tones of let's run away and never doing it. The sun-drenched month of August, sipped away like a bottle of wine. A mirrored disco ball hovering above a dance floor. A whiskey bottle beckoning, hands held through plastic. A single thread that, for better or for worse, ties you to your fate. Pretty soon these images in my head grew faces or names and became characters. I found myself not only writing my own stories, but also writing about or from the perspective of people I've never met, people I've known, or those I wish I hadn't. An exiled man walking the bluffs of a land that isn't his own, wondering how it all went so terribly, terribly wrong. An embittered tormentor showing up at the funeral of his fallen object of obsession. A 17-year-old standing on a porch, learning to apologize. Love-struck kids wandering up and down the evergreen highline. My grandfather, Dean, landing at Guadalcanal in 1942. A misfit widow getting gleeful revenge on the town that cast her out. A tale that becomes folklore is one that is passed down and whispered around, sometimes even sung about. The lines between fantasy and reality blur, and the boundaries between truth and fiction become almost indiscernible. Speculation over time becomes fact. Myths, ghost stories, and fables. Fairy tales and parables, gossip and legend. Someone's secrets written in the sky for all to behold. In isolation, my imagination has run wild, and this album is the result. A collection of songs and stories that flow like a stream of consciousness. Picking up a pen was my way of escaping into fantasy, history, and memory. I've told these stories to the best of my ability with all the love, wonder, and whimsy they deserve. Now it's up to you to pass them down.
Wow. Yeah, that does really describe the album, because the absence of the production makes it seem like a homemade album. Like I could see this whole album being just her with a guitar. Like it as folklore would be, passed on orally. It could be just somebody around a campfire, maybe with an acoustic guitar, just singing these songs. So it does have exactly the vibe she was going for.
Yeah, for sure.
Which is very good news for Joe. As Swifties who follow our Instagram will know that we made a tongue-in-cheek post about The One, a song about the one who got away. And so if Taylor was singing that about herself, saying that there was one guy who got away, saying, what if he was the one? Like, what if I was the one? Joe would not be too happy about that thought. So good news for him that it is non-autobiographical.
But even, going back to that song, though, that's the first song on the album. And so I think we both watched the music video first for Cardigan, which she released at 9 Pacific time, midnight Eastern. And then went back and listened to the album. And so The One being the second song that we heard of the album. And, initially I'm just like, man, this sounds, this has really similar sounds to Cardigan, right? As we kind of learned listening to the rest of the album, it all has similar sounds. But the song still really stuck out to me. And I'd say, at least on my initial read through, it's definitely one of my favorites. I think because like lyrically very clever, very well put together. Yeah. And it could be, Taylor might be thinking about it from someone else's perspective, as she does on a lot of these songs, but it could also be from her own perspective. And it's a lot more than other songs in the album. It's very relatable. I think a lot of people can relate to it. And it's not even necessarily like, oh, the one who got away. Like, I think she wrote it in a way that suggests, like, you could even be like, oh, it's not the one who got away. You're just like, man, what if they were the one? What if we had gotten together? Like, that is what I wanted at the time. You're okay with it now. It's not like you're still fretting about it, but it's still something interesting to think about, And so it's like, oh, I think, most people have that sort of relationship, something, that kind of nabs, that thought is kind of a hook for a lot of people. And I think, that's where Taylor is so strong in her songwriting, is finding a way to get people in to, relate, identify with what she's saying, have the similar feelings. And I think The One is definitely the one of the best songs on this album at accomplishing that.
Yeah, great song. The line that stood out to me was, the greatest loves of all time are over now. I was lying in bed listening to this album, just eyes closed, letting it soak in, and then that line came up, and I like bolted upright. I was like, wow, what a thought. Like, think of the greatest love stories in history. Like, those people are now dead. Just
Yeah.
such a morbid line just out of
Yeah.
nowhere.
Well, I like the part, it's near the end where she's like, oh yeah, you're probably, having rosé with their family right now. What if that was me? Like, what if what if we were doing that? Oh, and it's like, dang, like, yeah, you think, oh, these, it's not just, when something like that ends, it's not like you don't just not really see that person anymore. There's like all those other relationships that you built, or friendships, what I mean, but like with other people that they either are related to, their friends. And it's like, oh, those could have continued. You didn't just lose that one relationship. You also kind of, stepped away from all the friendships and other relationships you made with people in their circle. And it's a whole like, oh man, we could have been fun if you were the one. And just, yeah, a great way to start the album. Kind of getting into that folklore vibe of getting you to just like be in your imagination, be thinking about like these stories, what could have been. And there's a lot of songs, especially at the beginning of the album, that have that, what could have been vibe, because they're more like breakup songs. And so that's where it's like, oh, if you're not aware that Taylor's specifically said, I'm, writing these songs from the perspective of other people, you might be like, oh, what's happened in the last 11 months of Taylor's life? Because literally less than a year ago, she released this album called Lover about one person.
Right. Yeah. And then we also talked about how a lot of these songs feel like throwbacks to other songs. For example, during our first listen through, you texted me and told me that Exile was basically this version of The Last Time.
Yes. Yeah. So Exile, which features Bon Iver, which was like super awesome. Like, I love Bon Iver, listening to their music. And so having a collab with Taylor and Bon Iver. And so Taylor has a song now that's like very much sounds like, well, Bon Iver's, I don't know if you're familiar, Scott, but like they do a lot of experimentation with their sounds. It's very, some of their songs can be kind of weird, but it's,
I only know Skinny Love. That's all I know.
So that would be more traditional folk song by them, but they have a lot of songs that are just like really weird, like almost discordant. Like they do a lot of experimentation, be like more like alternative music. This is more traditional, the one that Taylor did with Bon Iver on this album, but it has the same vibes. As I texted you when I first heard it, I'm like, this is literally like the new hipper, Bon Iver version of The Last Time from Red, which if you're not familiar with that song, that's a song by Taylor Swift that features Gary Lightbody, and it has the same sort of vibe where it's like Gary Lightbody, or in this case Bon Iver, singing from the guy's perspective, and then Taylor Swift obviously singing from the girl's perspective about a failing. And Last Time, it's about a relationship that's failed, but they keep coming back together. This is the last time I'm asking you this. This is the last time I'm giving you a second chance in The Last Time. And then this is like Exile. It's thinking about like, oh, this relationship failed and now we're exiled, but singing from their separate perspectives. So they're very similar songs, different, but similar, and definitely give me, there's so many connections. And so that'll be something that we'll need to dive into more when we cover Exile.
Yeah, I love the two perspectives overlapping in the chorus, especially when it says that the guy's perspective says, you never gave me any signs, and the girl's perspective right after says, I gave you literally every sign there was. That's just so so fitting to a relationship. And then another song that I thought was reminiscent of another song, The Last Great American Dynasty, I felt was a little bit like Starlight, talking about a specific historical relationship. So I thought that might imply that you would hate that song, since listeners of the pod would know that Starlight is Captain Natty's least favorite song on Red. So is The Great American Dynasty your least favorite song on this album?
I can't say it is. I can't say it isn't though either, because a lot of this, like, I don't really have a clear not favorite, and a lot of them sound very similar. So, it's hard to say. But what stood out for me for that song was that she seemed to imply that it was about the person who used to own the house that she owns in Rhode Island. I don't know if you caught that.
No, I don't really understand the story of that song yet. I haven't dove into the lyrics.
So there's a lyric. I need to pull it up. I don't even know if lyrics are posted online yet, if people have gotten them
Yeah,
transcribed.
they are.
Oh, they are? Okay, I'm going to pull it up. But basically, she's talking about this. It's one of the stories that she mentions in that little mini essay that I just read, where she says, where does she say?
Something about a widow.
Yeah, she says, a misfit widow getting gleeful revenge on the town that cast her out. But then there's a line where she basically says, like, that was the person who owned my house before I bought it. And it's talking about in Rhode Island, and she owns a big house in Rhode Island. So I'm wondering if she heard about this story because they were the previous owner. She was the previous owner of the house that she bought. I don't know. I could be completely
that'd be interesting. But that would fit the theme of passing down stories as she's doing throughout this album.
Yeah. I'm trying to find a lyric here.
Yeah, we can't cut anything out. So we've got to fill the time while we're looking for things. Normally in our audio only version.
So that's something we forgot. So that's something we forgot to mention. If you're listening to this on the pod, not on YouTube, we're recording this for YouTube. So go follow us on YouTube, Swift Boyz Podcast. But if you're watching us on YouTube, we're doing this on Zoom because we're both out of town. So like we're normally in Seattle together and we record in the same place. And we just happened to, again, we didn't plan for this. Taylor didn't give us any notice.
This was a full-on surprise.
So we just had to make this work. I'm using my mom's Zoom account to record. So shout out to Mama Captain Natty. That sounds weird.
Mama Natty.
Mama Natty, yeah.
And I'm using my brother's mic here. So this is actually a better equipment than I usually use. So hopefully except it's coming through Zoom. So you might not get the full benefit of the external mic. But then the other thing we would want to mention about that is hopefully quality will get better over time. This is our baseline. In the future, we will hopefully get better equipment and record better video.
Yeah, if you're watching us on YouTube right now, we're only doing Zoom like this. It's going to be lower quality because we can't be together. Normally, we'll actually have a legit setup. So you can look forward to that. If you like us now, you'll like us even more when we look more professional. So anyway, so going back to Great American Dynasty, the line I was thinking of, she says, "Who knows if I never showed up, what could have been? There goes the loudest woman this town has ever seen. I had a marvelous time ruining everything."
Yeah, I noticed when she went into first person. I thought that was funny.
Right. So I think in that case she is talking about herself because the whole song is third person. Mm-hmm. So then when she brings in the first person, she is talking about herself. So.
But what was it about her the entire time? I thought maybe she was the widow, or at least speaking from that perspective, and then she just brought it into first person to emphasize that.
Oh.
But I guess I don't know if that makes sense plot wise because I haven't dug into that. So. In the true Swift Boyz fashion, I will not fact check myself.
Oh, here we go. No. So this is that's the chorus line, but the one that actually I think initially I did think like, wait, is it from her like Taylor's perspective or is she doing first person as this other person? But she says at the end of the bridge, 50 years is a long time. Holiday house sat quietly on that beach, free of women with madness, their men and bad habits, and then it was bought by me.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And then she goes into the chorus, who knows if I never showed up, what could have been? So I do think it's about she heard these crazy stories about whoever lived in her house before she did, probably from her neighbors, who knows? We're just speculating at this point. But it's this encapsulates this album of folklore. Like, she's had 4 months just stuck inside or wherever whatever she's doing. But just to focus on writing these songs. And so she's getting these stories and she's able to, turn them into songs. So it's just like it's a great wake-up call. We've been, it's been 4 months of quarantine now. How productive have we been? Then there's Taylor Swift, who's released an entire 16-song album and a music video.
Yeah. Swifties, have you been sitting on the couch doing nothing, or have you been, revolutionizing the genre of folk?
Yeah, I feel like
I definitely haven't been doing the latter.
No, but I feel like Taylor's just like, she's going for every genre. She's just trying to be like the best at everything. She's like, all right, Country, I did that when I was 16. Easy peasy. She moved to pop. First album, wins a Grammy, whatever. Now she's like transitioning more into this. It's not quite folk. It's like more of a modern, I guess modern folk. I feel like that's a good way to describe it. And like the sounds on this album are great. I think, yeah, again, the only like nitpick I would have, as we already talked about, is that a lot of the sounds are they're hard to differentiate, at least on an initial listen through, which is
Right.
all that a lot of people are going to give it, right? Like obviously Taylor Swift fans, Swifties, are going to listen to the album a lot more, and we'll be able to like, with more listens, you're more easily able to dissect differences and appreciate differences between songs. But in an initial listen through, there's not a lot to differentiate each song from the others.
Yeah, it'd be hard to pick out some singles if she did want to do some singles. I guess she did make a music video for Cardigan, so that was picked out as her first single.
I think the one would make a great single, especially because it has the single. There's some
right.
play.
Yeah, in a literal sense, the one.
So we can't really go through. It doesn't make sense to like go through every song and give our opinion because again, there are some that
we'll save that for the entirety of
season 3. I wouldn't have much to say. I did tell Scott that I had a new ranking. Like,
oh yeah, tell me it
here. So if you're new to the pod or you didn't listen to last season, basically when we did this similar episode for Lover, giving our initial impressions, I made this like kind of funny tier ranking list of each song either being skip, solid, or slap. So we're retiring that for Lover. That was great for Lover. But like with this new album, I assumed it was going to be kind of similar sounds to what, kind of like what we got. And so I wanted to come up with a new ranking because I didn't feel like slap really would fit, the way this album is created.
Yeah, these definitely aren't slaps.
Right. I was right to assume that. So my ranking system was meh, a mood, or a mash.
What was the last
mood, what?
Wait, meh, mood, or what?
Mash.
Mash. As in like you mash to it?
Like a mash. So okay, so
I don't get
I want to amend that because when I was thinking of this during the day, I thought a lot of songs were going to be a mood, and I was right. Like a lot of these songs are a mood.
Yeah, definitely a mood.
But I was like, okay, I don't know for sure that this album is going to be all like basically the vibe that we got. So I was like, mash is kind of like a slap, but not quite as much of a slap. So I left that in there just in case there were some songs that were more of like a pop vibe. But I think basically everything on this album can either be meh or a mood because they all kind of sound similar. So like, yeah, I think that works. Meh being like, it's fine. Mood being like, oh yeah, this is a mood. Like I relate, the song puts me in a mood. Yeah, I think it works. I would say this album is a mood. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. If I had to choose between meh and mood, I'd call it a mood.
Yeah. So there you go, Swifties. I guess every album we're gonna come up with a new ranking system. I'm trying to make them all alliterative. We'll see how long that lasts. So
skip songs like yeah. So it is. Oh, even Slap Shaker was alliterative. So yeah, there it is.
So
okay. And so prior to this release of this podcast, we'd been releasing about one a month. So we might have to kick that into gear now that we have a motivation of a brand new album. This, I think, we'll just upload raw, unedited, maybe even right after we're done recording, in which case we have 2 back-to-back episodes because I just posted episode 1.
If only we knew. If only we knew it was fun.
If only we could have predicted the least predictable album drop that I could ever think of.
I think Taylor must have just been listening to the podcast and she was waiting. She's like, I'm going to mess with them. Once they release, I know they're doing 1989 next. Once they release that first episode, 1989, I'm going to just mess with them, drop this new album, just ruin all their plans.
Yeah, we put so much effort into deciding which album to do next. We had a whole competition. The Swifties voted, and now that's all out the window. We're doing this new album.
So we'll save 1989 for the next album, assuming she doesn't drop another secret album that we're not ready for.
Yeah, only 11 months apart. That's absolutely
I know,
insane.
it's so sad, honestly. Like, I think actually something I haven't mentioned yet that I wanted to. It's sad Lover, the Lover era only lasts for 11 months, right? It came out August 23rd of last year. This new album comes out July 24th 4th at midnight this year. 11 months. You know, the day before her Loverfest concert series was meant to start. I think that was intentional too. But like she clearly wasn't going to release this anytime soon, assuming COVID hadn't happened. So another, you know, sad part of COVID that the Lover era ended so soon, but also like it gave us a new Taylor album quicker. So that's nice.
Right. Yeah. So that brings up the question of when we do go to Loverfest, is it going to be a double album concert? Are we going to get folklore songs?
Okay. No, knowing Taylor, I don't know Taylor, but you know, like being familiar with Taylor, I think Loverfest will still be Loverfest. You know, there's too many songs on both albums to like really.
Right. Yeah. They're both giant albums.
Both of them. And she can make 2 concerts and people will give her money. So why would she not do that? You know?
Yeah. If she can make 16 different album covers, she can make 2 concerts.
Exactly. So, I guess we'll be going back-to-back concerts next year, maybe. Who knows? We'll see. That'd be wild.
Hopefully.
Yeah. So I guess before we finish, were there any other songs that stood out to you in your initial listen through that you want to talk about?
I had something I was gonna say. Shoot, now there's pressure on because normally I would take the time to think of what I had to say.
Okay.
But
Well, while you're thinking, I can go.
Okay.
With Illicit Affairs, I thought was great.
Okay. I
That
don't
was one of
remember
the
that
ones
one at all.
Jack Antonoff. Do you remember that one?
I have no recollection of it at this point.
Okay. So, I mean, it's as described, it's about an illicit affair. But not like a specific illicit affair, like that's the theme. But like the music, I'd say the sound, you know, still similar, consistent with most of the rest of the sounds on the album, but like a little more, almost like spunky. I don't know. It's a little more unique than the rest of the album. I think it stands out musically, but then also lyrically, it's a great like look at, again, assuming Taylor, folklore, looking at it from someone else's perspective. I don't know why she'd write a song about herself being in an affair. That sounds weird.
Right.
But it's about how like an affair, you know, makes these promises. You know, it has this one truth and then it has 1,000 little lies. Like she's looking at it from a very real perspective of, you know, it's like there's something that attracts you to it, but then it's just like it leads to death, basically. Like it's not a good thing in the end. And I think it's musically very fun to listen to, and like lyrically a very realistic like look into like why affairs happen, what's attractive about them, but then also, you know, like what's the downside. So that definitely stood out because it's definitely a theme that Taylor hasn't really touched on, at least as explicitly as she is here. That definitely stood out to me.
All right. Well, if there's one thing I've learned in this Zoom call, it's not to podcast from your phone because I have to hold it up the whole time and then I want to reorganize it.
Should you use your laptop? Wait, you know, you're using your laptop for recording the audio.
Yeah. Well, if we even use that. So this will be a learning moment, Swifties.
Hopefully we never have to do this again. Hopefully this is a one-time thing. It's really unfortunate.
Hopefully.
It's really unfortunate that
the most important episode of the last. That's what I was gonna say. Okay, I got it. I'm sure somebody's already pointed this out, but July 24th, 7 + 2 + 4 = 13. Just like the Lover release date did.
Right, 8 + 2 + 3, 7 + 2 + 4. Yeah, that's just standard now. Yeah.
Right. I wonder if she like, if that's why it was so sudden a release. Is she's like, oh, 13 comes up tomorrow. Like I have to release it right now.
I mean, I'm sure she planned it at least a month ago, but she definitely wasn't. She definitely wasn't going to release it on August 23rd again.
Oh yeah.
Because that would just overshadow, you know, the Lovers.
Oh yeah, you don't want 2 anniversaries on the same day.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, it's like getting married on your birthday.
Yeah, that sounds awful. That'd be the worst.
Yeah, I wouldn't know. Never been married.
I've never had
a birthday.
Yeah. Oh man.
All right, Swifties. Oh, do you have something more to say?
No, well, I guess one final thought. There's a bonus track called The Lakes on the CD editions. So no one's heard that because apparently the CD, I pre-ordered one. I didn't buy all 16 deluxe editions because I'm not insane. Not saying you're insane if you do it. But
you just have a lot of disposable income.
Right, yeah, clearly. but I think it only comes on the CDs, and the CDs, it said it takes 2 to 3 weeks to ship. So like obviously all the main songs are online everywhere, YouTube, Spotify. But like I guess whoever gets the CD first gets to give their initial impression of the bonus song. So
yeah, we'll be looking forward to that.
Yeah, maybe we should do that one. Normally we go in album order, but maybe we should cover that one first because some people won't have listened to it. So
Yeah, as soon as you get it.
I don't know.
We could even play it straight through and just accept the copyright strike. Oh, actually, yeah, if we start posting these on YouTube, we have to be more careful because I sometimes put music into the pod, but
I think fair
I don't
use.
think that applies on YouTube.
You can for like little bits, like 10 seconds. I think is fine.
Yeah, I don't know. I've heard there's drama, like they flag things that are fair use.
But I mean, we're not making money on this, so like, who cares?
Oh, we should get into the YouTube drama. That'll be our next big thing because there's entire markets about YouTube drama.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, one more song that I'm looking at the track list. Before we go, one more song that stood out to me was Epiphany, which was Taylor comparing World War II, people on the front lines of World War II to people on the front lines of the current pandemic, which I thought was interesting. And
Epiphany, I didn't even get that. I mean,
I think I was actually at an advantage in the sense that I listened to the songs on YouTube, and she has a lyric video already for all the songs. So I was kind of reading the lyrics.
I was just listening, so it was harder to get the actual story behind a lot of these songs.
So Epiphany starts with her, I guess, talking about her grandfather's experience in World War II, because she mentions that.
Yeah, as she mentioned in her essay.
And then talks about basically nurses or doctors on the front lines of pandemic. And then the epiphany being you only get like a little bit of time to sleep, and your epiphany is like dreaming of a better time, something not as dark. It's just an interesting song, very timely, obviously.
Yeah, she also gave a shout out to all the nurses and doctors at the end of the Cardigan music video. It was just a little text screen saying thank you.
Yeah, well, and speaking of the Cardigan music video, we haven't really talked about that. I guess one initial impression was the very folklore vibes, right? Like she falls through this piano and ends up in this like mossy forest.
Oh, yeah, that was a beautiful forest that I assume CGI'd. I don't know how much of that was real and how much of that was added on, but the images were absolutely gorgeous.
For sure. So that was cool. Hopefully we get more music videos. That was a great intro into folklore theme, kind of set the stage, and then we got all these other songs that are a mood, but we gotta, it'll take this album, I think, more so than a lot of other albums, because it's a lot more lyric driven, which I like. There'll be a lot more to dissect, but that means it requires a lot more listens to really understand and see what Taylor is trying to convey, what hidden meanings, what images are hidden in her songs, and there's always a lot. So it's going to be a fun time going through it. I'm looking forward to it. Hope you guys are too. Yeah.
Yep, lots of work for us to do. So we'll see you next week, Swifties, with an analysis of The One.
Of The One, yes. Thanks for putting up with our sketchy recording setup this week. We hope to be back to our normal setup next time. And get cracking on these songs. Post more often, give better analysis, and just, be the Swift boys and be better. I don't know what I'm saying.
All right, see you next week.
It's midnight. All right. Bye, guys. Thanks for listening. Follow us on socials.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we've got Instagram, Swift Boys, all one word, with a Z. We're on Spotify, now YouTube, Google Play, Spreaker, anywhere you want to podcast, anywhere you want to watch a YouTube video, we'll be there. We're on Twitter, Instagram, all the good places.
Yep.
All right. We'll see you.
Thanks for listening, guys. Catch you next time.